Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, the political and government correspondent, and it is an even-numbered year, 2024, and it is late August as we tape this segment today, getting ready for the November election. Today, we have as my guest Kyle Kilbourn, who is a candidate for Congress for the 7th Congressional District. So Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
All right. Well, let's start with pretty much the basics. What's your background and qualifications to be running for office?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town, about 200 people, so a very rural town in North Dakota. My parents are from a working class background. My dad was a construction worker, my mom was a waitress. But they struggled a lot, and so for them, education was super important. They knew that, to get ahead in this world, you have to get educated, and they made sure I did that. My first job was a janitor at elementary school at age 14, but I've had success as a designer, innovator, and researcher. I was the first in my family to graduate with undergraduate degree and graduate degrees. So I did a bachelor's at the University of Minnesota in Twin Cities, and then I went to Denmark to get a master's and PhD. Um, and most of my sort of career has been in doing design research. So, I would lead teams into people's homes and do interviews and listen to them, and then bring that back to engineers, marketers, executives to design solutions for folks.
Okay. You mentioned a PhD in what was your field?
Yeah, it's product design and innovation. That's plain and simple.
Okay. All right. Well, great. So, do you have any prior political experience?
I have never ran for partisan office. I have been on local neighborhood boards and uh, neighborhood boards and governing bodies like that. So I say I have experience in governing and not politics. But I have been involved in student government as an undergrad at the University of Minnesota. I was a president of the student council of college boards that helped deliver events and programming for students. So that is where my experience lies.
All right. And so which part of the 7th CD are you from?
Yeah, we live in the town of Woodboro, which is in Oneida County, and so it's on the other side of the state. It's one of the largest districts in Wisconsin, the largest, with a third of the state in land mass size, with 26 counties.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you being able to find time in your schedule to be on the show and recognize that with Zoom and after COVID, we learned we can do a lot with that. So thanks for being part of this. Now, I have to ask, given that you have, um, more of an educational, I would say, background, uh, why are you running for this position?
Yeah, so for me, a representative in Congress is one of those positions where you can take on, complex and meaty challenges. Our rural district, grew up in a rural district, and it's a struggle. It's a struggle for healthcare. It's a struggle for getting good jobs, and I know what that's like. I had to leave to do just that. And so, being in Congress is one of those positions where you can tackle things like healthcare, you can tackle things like climate, you can tackle things like where do we develop and how do we make sure that the economics work for all families. And so for me, that is what I like doing, tackling challenging problems. I've done that in my professional career. I've worked on medical devices, I've worked in retail, I worked at the university. So, it's those kind of challenges that really drive me forward.
Okay. So I guess put another way, when I ask why you're running for this position, Congress is one of the few professions that have an even lower reputation than lawyers. So Congress has an approval rating of about 7 or 8%. Why would you want to be part of that institution?
Yeah, working in my professional career, you learn a lot about yourself. You take a lot of, things about, what is your purpose? What makes you sort of tick and what kind of skills are you most suited for? And for me, it's about improving organizations. And so for me, because it has such a low approval rating, there's a lot of upsides to being in Congress. If you can make an impact in an institution like that, you can make an impact anywhere. And so, for me, it's about um, staying focused on who you're doing it for. So maybe the organization doesn't have a good reputation, but staying true to you're there to represent the people in your district. And for me, that is meaningful enough.
Okay, so if elected, what changes to government policy would you seek?
Yeah. So unfortunately, our rural areas are, how we fund rural areas and services are not a great way of doing it. So for example, our rural hospitals, they're struggling. And we know that. We see that, in the around Eau Claire, hospitals shutting down because of the funding model. And so for me, one of my top priorities is looking at how do we make sure that rural areas not only survive, but thrive. And a lot of that is around how we fund things. So how do we fund rural hospitals? Because the hospitals have to exist in rural areas, even if people don't go to them frequently, which it is a slightly older district, so there is a lot of usage, but it's less usage than in a rural area. And so, like, what are the funding mechanisms to ensure that that place exists so that it's accessible when you need it? And so, for me, it's about how do we have a rural strategy that ensures our rural areas survive, because it's critical not just for the rural areas, but for the rest of the country, because the products that we produce, the services that we produce are needed across the country, not just in the district.
Okay. Well, in order to be able to effectuate those changes for rural areas, you have to get elected. And so, and to get elected, you got to campaign. What do you see as the most important issues when you go meet folks door to door, however you meet them? What are your campaign's major issues?
Yeah, number one is healthcare. I've already talked about the rural healthcare, but it's also about reproductive healthcare. Knowing that, in this district hospitals are closing down, and different services are being cut, and knowing that women of reproductive age have a way to, if they're going to have a baby, do they have to travel an hour and a half to have that baby? And so that is one of the things. Related to that is the safety of our water. I hear it across the district. So on the eastern side, it's a lot about PFAS. We have a lot of paper mills and a lot of contaminants that are going into well water. On the western side, it's CAFOs. And so people are concerned about being safe with in their waters and making sure that it's not contaminated. Um, it sort of makes sense when you think about the demographics of this district. It is slightly older, 30% or so, or is over 65. And so health is something that's on their mind. Related to that is Social Security, and making sure that we're protecting and enhancing Social Security instead of cutting it. And that is one of those things where it affects me personally. My parents are on Social Security, and I know how they struggle. It's they were hard workers as much as they could, and construction worker and a waitress, and they didn't get paid very well, and so now they're trying to survive on Social Security for their retirement. And so it's not just people in the district, but it's also personal that it affects my family members as well.
Do you have something specific, if I could stop you there, because Social Security is something that I've talked about for a long time. Prior to St. Croix County being put in the 7th CD, they were in the 3rd CD. And I remember when Ron Kine was first elected in 1996 at his first public forum here in St. Croix County, or listening session, I asked what was going to get done to try and protect and preserve Social Security so that it doesn't run out of money.
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing has been done since then. So what would you propose?
Yeah, having ideas is one thing, and getting others to agree with those ideas is another thing. And being an innovator, I know that there's lots of ideas and innovation. One idea that's out there that seems simple enough is raising the cap on Social Security for what you pay into. Now, if you make 100 every year, it changes like 160 some thousand. If you go above that in income, you don't pay into the system anymore. And so removing that cap would be one way to sort of at least extend the life of Social Security. Um, some people want to think about raising the retirement age, which I think is a wrong way to do it. Especially for working class families who use their bodies as part of their job. And so they cannot afford to sort of work even longer when their bodies wear out. And so while I have ideas, I think the power of a representative is convincing your other colleagues to actually do something about it. And that's where I think my background in participatory design and approaches and getting people on board with, here's the issues, here's what we need to do about it, is one of those strengths that I have.
Okay. Besides healthcare, reproductive healthcare, Social Security, I interrupted you. Did you have another one on that list?
Yeah, and protecting our natural resources. So the 7CD is abundant in farmland, forest, and lakes, and those provide for our way of life. And a lot of our small businesses, especially in the northern part of the state, are around tourism. And so making sure that our lakes are preserved, the tourists are feel like they're getting the wilderness that they need to come up here and continue to come up here. And so I think one of those issues of that's why a lot of people live in northern Wisconsin is because of the wilderness. And so making sure that we're tackling that, making sure that we're not degrading our environment, but also related to that is climate change, making sure that as we come up with new solutions that they're taking into account that we don't want to affect this place. So let's make sure that we're not putting into practice, technologies and solutions that we're going to degrade the environment over the next 50 to 100 years.
Okay. So, like in most elections, I mean, there's two primary candidates. There might be other third-party candidates involved, but ultimately, it's a selection of a couple candidates, and you're running against a Republican incumbent, Tom Tiffany. What are one to two of the most obvious differences that you're highlighting in your campaign between you and Congressman Tiffany?
Yeah, I think, it's obvious that Tiffany is out of touch with Wisconsin needs. Like he voted against, capping prescription drug cost. He stood up, with Trump to say, the border bill is a bad idea, bipartisan border bill. Maybe you don't get everything you want, but that makes it, probably a good idea. And so he came up against that. In spite of him saying he wants to solve all these problems, he actually doesn't. I think for me, it's, I come from a design background. I love to solve problems, and that is what I will do. And that sort of distinguishes me from Tom Tiffany. He's a career politician. I'm not.
Okay. So now with politics, especially in November and even numbered years, it's partisan election. And so the parties control a lot. Some people say they control the candidates that run on those parties, but are there planks or positions in the Democratic platform that you disagree with or are unlikely to support?
I mean, the planks are the planks. They're not laws, they're not prescription of how you run as a candidate. I think for me, what I'm going to be listening to is the folks in the district. If that goes against what the party is saying, that's fine. Uh, for me, it's,
Is there
I'm
anything specific though in that party platform that you have problems with, you know, uh, getting support from the majority of the seventh district voters?
I don't think so. Most of the policy issues, the majority of people do support. It's just it's never come up for a vote before, and so we've never had that sort of opportunity to sort of ensure that we have a representative representing us.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to get at is a lot of getting things done is the ability to reach across the aisle,
Mhm.
maybe support positions of the opposing party in order to get them to support your position. So, asking it that last party platform question conversely, is there anything that you would support of the opposing party? And if so, in what circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Republicans have been all about the border, and we need a strong border. Like, I don't think that's, I don't think it's a partisan issue necessarily, but we need a strong border. Like that is something that makes us Americans, and putting into place the policies to make sure that happens, that has the right funding, that sort of ensures that we have the workers that we need. Wisconsin is a agricultural state, and we depend on migrants, and so making sure that we're having the workforce that we need while also having a secure border.
Okay, so secure border is at least one anyway that you could try to work towards with the other party. Anything else that you know, jumps out at you. You know, they have positions on from the gun lobby to obviously, ban on abortions and so forth. So is there anything else out there close to securing the border that you would come close to supporting?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of people support common sense gun laws. So, I mean, I don't think that is a partisan issue either. I mean, I've talked to many gun owners on both sides. Yeah, let's say, yeah, like we need to protect our children from gun violence, and having background checks isn't a deal breaker for most people. And so making sure that we are doing all that we can in a reasonable manner is one of those things that I hear over and over again.
All right. So it sounds like to the extent that there might be overlap with, populist ideas that are supported by more than 50% of the party, it's something that you would try to work to accomplish.
Exactly, exactly. And I think too often we don't have conversations with each other, and I hear that when I'm at fairs and picnics. People come up to me and like they want someone just to have a conversation with, and we may not agree on everything. So in Marathon County, a couple came up to me. We didn't agree on an issue, and they were fine with that. They just wanted to have a conversation and know that, okay, you sound reasonable. We may not agree on every issue, and that's fine. But there are ways that we can find agreement, and so those are the things that we need to work towards. Is where are those agreements?
Okay. So anything you want voters to know about you that we haven't discussed already?
Yeah, I think, the voters need to know it's time for a change. We need a representative that's going to vote on issues that are important to them in the district right now. Our rural areas are struggling. I've driven to every county in the district, 26 counties, and I see a lot of closed shops, schools that are shut down. And so our communities are hurting. The heart of our communities are sort of dying. And so I think there is a need for change in our representative that is actually going to get something done. I think, you look at the record of the current Congress, it's, 1/3 of the bills being passed are renaming post offices. And so, is that what we want our representatives to do, is just rename post offices? Or
Really? For what period was that true of? 1/3 of the bills being
this
renamed
this
post?
Congress, this
Okay.
Congress. And so
Okay.
it's pretty crazy to think that 1/3 of the bills in this Congress are about renaming post office. And Representative Tiffany got his, and Nasita, and as well. So it's things like that sort of make people say, all right, well, let's put someone else in there that is trying to get something done. And for me, as a design background, that is all I've been focused on, is getting things done. I worked in corporate sector many years, and you get paid when you do things well, and you get paid to do those things, and that is what I've done.
Okay. So Kyle, how do voters find out more about you and your positions on issues?
Yeah, they can go to my website. It's kylekilbourn.com, KYLEKILBOURN, or find me on my Facebook page.
All right. So there is a U in Kilbourn.
There is a U, but no E.
Okay. Got it. And so with that, I want to thank you for being on the show. Remind our voters to be knowledgeable about the candidates, do your research, and then make sure you get out there and vote. The date of the election, Kyle, is?
November 5th.
All right. So, and hopefully folks don't just vote for those two names one of those two names at the top of the ticket, but they look down. And pretty important is how Congress gets things done. And it'll be kind of a referendum on, really, you see it as a referendum on the current office holder, right? The
I do.
incumbent.
I do.
All right. Well, with that, Kyle, thanks for being on the show. Hopefully we see you over here in Hudson at some point between now and the end of October. It's still 2 full months and a week before the election. So again, thanks for coming on the show. Good luck in your endeavors across the 7th CD.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, viewers, for watching another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson. Keep watching.